a little bit before the stand and then during the stand, where because I would tell her, like, I always thought I was there for you, and she said, Mom, you were, but you weren't emotionally. I didn't want to burden you with what was going on with me because I could see what was going on with you. And I never thought about that. I always thought, like, I'm here for you guys. I'm Mom, like, come to me with anything. But she didn't want to. And our oldest probably the same way. He doesn't let too many things affect him, but now we're seeing it with the younger one. He told me the same thing. So I apologize to my kids that I wasn't the mom that they needed me to be when they needed me to be available for them.
So in this video, we're going to talk about when your children don't understand your stand. Something that we see is very common in the questions. Monica, I know for you, the stand was a little different because our children are older, but it's still very similar. You have children that are involved in the stand, that are standing with you. Some of them not necessarily standing against you, but they're not walking alongside or not agreeing with your stand, and that can be a difficult pain point. On top of what your spouse is doing, now you have your children, and if they're smaller children, how much harder would it have been for you to handle the stand with smaller children?
Right.
That's something you thought about, or how much more difficult was it?
Well, I think, when we hear the standards talk about their having younger children, I think, okay, I can see, I was able to give a lot of my time to the Lord when I came home, because I was making time when I was at work and stuff, right? So when you come home and you have younger children, like, you have all the things that you have to do in the home and tend to the kids and all this stuff. But God will still give you time in there. But anyway, so as having the adult children, they're more vocal, or maybe they could be more vocal on what they believe and what they feel, where you should be and what you should be doing.
Yeah. And we want to address a couple of points, what hopefully we can bring some, not necessarily clarity, but pointers on how to address these situations and how important it was for your stand. So for our kids to see the strength in you, because I think the kids, not I think, I know they were looking at you. They were also looking at me. Had they seen me and seen you react differently than what you did, it would have affected them so much more, worse. It still affected them, but it could have been far more worse. And that's part of the stand is bigger than you. It was bigger than your healing, bigger than my healing, also our kids' healing. And we've seen the effect of just our immediate family members that your stand has had, and what God has done through that. So there's
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Sorry. I wanted to just say, when you said our kids, as you're talking, the Lord just keeps reminding me of our grandkids, because that kept being brought up to me in my stand, was how Malachi was not going to see that Robert. And so, and all the grandbabies to follow. So it wasn't just about our kids, but how our grandbabies were, not going to see this.
Right. Something that you've experienced. It wasn't something that was common in my family, but in your family that happened often. So you truly were standing on, we're going to talk about it later on in the video, but it stops with me. That was your attitude and your stand. And again, this is a pain that many of you all can relate to. And we want to address some of these issues and hopefully bring some good suggestions, or at least encouragement through this video. And it's one of the things that many spouses, when your spouse walks away, it's another thing that when your children began to pull away, and during your stand, they didn't pull away, and now I'm having to heal what I caused, and this is what prodigals have to face. And sometimes it's hard for them to confront this. But
our kids didn't pull away during the stand, or at least our boys didn't, and our daughter didn't either. She got closer to me in it, but the pull away was after.
Right. Yeah. And maybe your children have told you, if you have young teenagers or young adult kids, maybe one of them have told you, like, Mom, you're being foolish, or Dad, you need to just move on. Or maybe they've said that this marriage is over. Maybe they're probably speaking from a place of anger. Maybe they're tired because they see you're tired. Maybe they've just watched years, and this is ours. They've watched years of conflict and don't understand why you're still standing. And for some of you, this pain runs even deeper. Your prodigal spouse is using your kids as maybe a mediator or like a messenger. Your children feel trapped in the middle, and some of you are experiencing the parental alienation and watching relationships with your children like slowly just dissolve or deteriorate while you're already grieving your marriage. And this is common. This is something that we've seen quite often, is the young adults, because the prodigal has made it a little bit difficult. Some prodigals are just, there's so much shame, they run from it. Some of them are defending themselves and trying to justify their actions, so they're being very angry or aggressive in their time. So every situation is different, but
well, and sometimes the standards are too, honey. The
yeah.
standards are, it's hard. It's really hard, but the standards are kind of in that same place too, where sometimes they're angry and they're upset and they're using that also.
Yeah.
That situation. And coming from a place of trying to protect, but is it the Lord leading you to be that way? Are you protecting or are you controlling?
I was just about to say that it's very similar to what it looks like in our relationship with each other. You're now you're pointing that towards your children, and you're trying to protect yourself, and you're doing it the same way, and you want to protect your children. So, and because your stand isn't only about your marriage restoration, it's also about the generational restoration, which is something that the Lord was leading you to, and we've seen this happen with many standards. And so, point number one is your children are responding to pain, not necessarily truth. And children, even adult children, they often interpret the family conflict through a lens of emotional safety. And when families, and we kind of talked about that during our midday break, how friends will speak to your circumstance from their pain, their experience, and or what they've seen around them. And so when families experience this separation or even divorce, many children unconsciously move toward whichever parent feels emotionally safer or more stable at the moment. And that's one thing that we were just reading about, how there's a preferential parent, and that also determines how much more severe the trauma can be for kids. If they were closer to the prodigal spouse or parent, it's going to be more traumatic for them. But if they were closer to the standing spouse, they're still going to be traumatized, but not nearly as severely if it was the other way around.
Well, and you've spoken on that before too, where you've said growing up who you would have chosen and why, because you felt safer in a weird kind of way, right?
Yeah, and I want to address that. And again, I say this over and over. I love my parents. My dad was a disciplinarian. He was the one, when it came time, you were afraid. My mom was the more vocal one. She would communicate many times through yelling. That caused me to want to shut down. I had said, I remember thinking, if my parents ever did separate, I would much rather live with my dad. I was safer around that type of punishment than I was around the yelling.
Yeah. Do you remember how old you were when you were thinking that?
Oh gosh, I had to have been 6. I mean, I remember thinking about this several times. So probably 7 to 10 years old, somewhere in there.
And it wasn't just the yelling. I'm sure you could feel the anger, and you could feel a lot of that in that. So your dad only came out. That person only came out when it was time to discipline. And with your mom, you kind of felt it often.
Which just shows you how traumatizing just that type of environment can be. The abuse. I'm not going to say it was physical abuse. It was just It wasn't discipline, it was punishment. But I understand my dad was coming from a place of being wounded as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I preferred that
Mm-hmm.
over being in an environment where there was communication via yelling
Mm-hmm.
many times. That's what I remember.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, and it's amazing what the impact that can have on you.
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, it's just depending on the attachment to the prodigal spouse or the standing spouse, it'll not really determine, but it can be more impactful or more severe when it comes to if they were closer to the prodigal
Mm-hmm.
spouse or parent.
Yeah.
So during that time, family systems they have this theory called triangulation, and it happens when tension between two people gets redirected through a third person. And instead of a husband and wife dealing directly with each other, it's the children becoming the emotional messengers, sometimes almost like a counselor
Mm-hmm.
or referees. And children, they were never designed to carry this, right?
Yeah.
It's something that was between you and I.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes our children got in the middle of it, not intentionally, but we would get our children involved because they saw things, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's something that can be draining on kids a little bit.
Yeah.
They're depending on their age, they're
Mm-hmm.
developing and they're seeing all this. So children were, again, they were never designed to carry this, and Scripture recognizes this. The enemy has always sought to divide families. He did it from the very beginning of time, right, with Adam and Eve, through the relationship, and that was never meant to be the case. Obviously, God had created Adam and Eve and wanted this union and to uh, be in communion with them.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the enemy sought out to destroy that. So, in the book of Malachi, it reminds us that God desires godly offspring and therefore calls us to protect marriage. In Malachi 2:15, it says, did he not make them one? And what was the one God was seeking? It was godly offspring. See, God understands that marriage impacts generations.
Mm-hmm.
Talks about this in scripture again, how the sins of the father will visit the third and fourth generation. I'd love to say that because it affects us,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So my wounds were going to trickle down and have gone trickled down to
Right.
my kids. Not as severe, but still it's traumatizing, right? And so that's why your stand was so important. But your children may not understand your stand today, but they are watching how you walk through the suffering. They're
Mm-hmm.
watching how you respond to
Yeah.
betrayal, and they're watching whether your pain turns into bitterness or whether
Yep.
God makes you more like Christ.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely. I mean, even with our kids, like, and you know what? Sometimes, like I said, our kids have to kind of sometimes they didn't put me. Well, yeah, I guess they kind of put me in check sometimes, especially the boys,
Mm-hmm.
because I remember when I told our oldest, and I said, uh, why does he do this to me or something like that? And he said, Mom, he's not only doing it to you, he does it to us too.
Yeah.
And I like, I was just thinking that's really crazy because here I was all about me, not realizing how much pain they've gone through,
All right.
right? Everything they've been through. And then our youngest, um, he would just tell me, Mom, he's going to have to face everything when he comes back. And so they were encouraging me because there were times when I reached out to them and cried and said, this is too hard. And they were really encouraging me. But if I was picking up the phone and being like, I can't believe your dad did this and your dad did that, I was going to be creating bitterness in them. And so I had to, like, once they would kind of help me to regroup in the why does he do this to me, and they're like, well, he's doing it to us too. I'm like, oh yeah. And so kind of like calm down in the moment a little bit. We would calm down together, and process together. But if I was to keep going at everything that you were doing, hurting me and doing against us, it was going to create bitterness in them, and that's one thing I did not want to do. And
Yeah.
I didn't see that in them at all. Like they had hurt, but I didn't see a bitterness in them. Now even them now, there's not a bitterness, there's a hurt. There's
Yeah.
still a hurt in them.
Yeah. And one thing that I did want to address about, you don't want to make them the counselor or the
Mhm.
mediator
Mhm.
or the referee, but God can still use the
Right.
kids
Right.
to reach the prodigal. And this might be where you want to maybe keep the kids away because you don't want them to go see the other person. You want to be mindful of the situation that you're putting your kids into. You know, where is that coming from? Is it coming from a place of fear?
Right. Well, and I think speaking of standards, we've heard different sides of it. We've heard where there was a stander who did address her husband. I don't know what phase he was in, if he was able to receive it right away when she said it, or if she had to wait a couple years down the road before she could say something to him. But when she mentioned to him, I don't want them going around the other person, he respected it. I think they said one time the kids went around the person, and he never did after that. And then there was another person who is taking her kids over to the husband and the other person every time he has visitation. But she said she had to confront the lady and tell her thank you for taking care of my kids. And but because the Lord led her to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's different. It's also what phase is the prodigal in? How is the standard going before the Lord with it, and how is the Lord directing you to do this? And people even do it with their adult kids,
Yeah.
right? Because we've had there's um, family gatherings where people are saying they don't want, I don't want them to show up to this. And
Yeah.
so, anyways, people are, it's
Yeah.
how the Lord is directing you.
Yeah. And again, it's very important to, we cannot state this enough. Every situation is different. If there's a physically abusive spouse, that,
Yeah.
you want to be very mindful of that.
Right.
If there's certain things involved where the spouse is just an alcoholic, or
Yeah.
they're into something else that's addictive, you obviously don't want your child around that stuff, and you want to be mindful of those things.
Yeah.
So we're not saying this applies to every situation. As you said, every situation is different, so you want to be aware of that. But definitely, if there's that part where the prodigal wants to take them around the other person, right off the bat, you want to be, no, those are my kids. They're not going to see
Right.
another man. They're not going to see another woman. And you want to protect your kids. You don't want them around what you view as strangers.
Right.
So yeah, it's something
Yeah.
very.
Especially, with the addictions. Because I used to think about that before.
Mm-hmm.
I used to think, because obviously you were a drinker, right? And I would think, like, I wouldn't want to keep the kids from you, but I want to protect my
Right.
kids. And I think, depending on how I would address you, if I came at you, you'd probably be like, no, I'm keeping them, just, on purpose, if I was coming and attacking you. But if I was, if I could be cordial with you and kind, and hey, don't worry about getting the kids. Go have fun. Do you, right? Maybe
Yeah.
you'd be like, oh, yeah, cool. But it's also, at that time, I wasn't seeking the Lord like I have now. But, allowing the Lord, because the Lord gives you strategies, the Lord gives you ways to approach things to do. But it's taking a deep breath that we've talked about and putting it before the Lord before you try to take control of the situation, especially when it comes to our kids,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to our kids. But what I had to realize was the Lord loves my kids more than I do. And it's hard to see that, but he absolutely loves my kids more than me.
Yeah. The second point we want to talk about is breaking the divorce cycle. And we talked about this a little bit earlier. So many families have generational patterns, and Monica's family had this. My family, not so much. So there's divorce, there's abandonment, there's infidelity, emotional shutdown, avoidance. These are very much, we would hear that they were hereditary. They were passed down to generations. Well, it's many times it was environmental, because it was a similar environment that they were in. So you're picking up the same wounds. So children can often recreate what was normalized in their home environment. And we say this with our daughter, and they many times they will either. I was talking to a friend of mine today, and he was in the military, and he said that he noticed that there was a certain group of girls that was attracted to a certain group of guys, and he was curious about that. He was like, "That's why," and he asked one, and she said, because they don't want to be abused, and they don't want to see their man go off to go clubbing. And it was something that many of them experienced. Now, it wasn't the same for all of them, but there's a reason why, because they're avoiding that particular type of man because probably they're used to what they've seen as a child, and so they want to avoid that. And so you can see either your daughter's going to say, I want a man like my dad, or I don't want a man like my dad. And it could be the same way with the son. I want a woman like my mom, or I don't want a woman like my mom. And so this can have a huge impact. So again, your children will recreate that what was normalized in their home environment. And not because they want to, but because it's familiar. We see this in the Exodus.
Well, just think about us, right? Like we're little and we're like, I'm never going to be like that. I'm never going to do what my mom did. I'm never going to do what, my grandma did or my dad did. And you grow up and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm doing exactly what they did. So we do the same thing that, and so how do we expect our kids to not pick that up also?
Yeah, or sometimes you don't do it to the degree your parents did.
Oh, right.
Maybe you do it a little bit less, and you think, well, I did better than them.
I did better, and which is what you and I both would say, is it was better than what we,
Yeah. And, we tried our best, as many people do, but many times it's just your wounds just kind of come out, and it's, or they're agitated and you start acting out on them. So, but standing is not simply saying I refuse to divorce. Standing says this cycle stops with me, and maybe restoration doesn't happen the way you want it or the way you hoped, which many times it didn't look the way you wanted it. It wasn't in your timing. It wasn't the way you thought it would look. But your children can still learn marriage matters because of your stand. They can still learn commitment matters because of your stand. They can still learn that forgiveness matters because of your stand. They can still learn that faithfulness matters. And we see that what is pushed today through television or just through societal norms, that's not always the case, right? It's not forgiveness. It's not the sanctity of marriage or the what God has joined together. Many times that's not celebrated, and it's that's partly why your stand was bigger than you. And the goal is not to teach your children that they must remain in an abusive or unsafe situation. The goal is to teach your children that relationships are worth fighting for, and the marriage should never be discarded. And in the book of Ephesians, we're told that we are to be imitators of God and walk in love. And that's in Ephesians chapter 5, verse 1 and 2. Children learn far more from what we model than what we preach.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's don't talk the talk, it's walk the walk.
Yeah. And even though, right now it's hard to see, where the kids are, because I'm like, wait, you were right there with me, and to see that now he's dealing with it, or that she's dealing with it. But it's trusting, like because the Lord said this needed to happen, and it's trusting that he's going to restore them. But I have to realize that just because I don't see it right now, that I will see it, that they'll see it.
Yeah.
Because they're probably like, I feel like there's a little resentment that I stayed. But I know that they need time also.
Yeah. So again, your children learn by watching you more than by listening to you. And point number 3 is when your children tell you to move on. This may be one of the hardest moments for many of you standers, when your child says, Mom, you're wasting your time or your life. Dad, they don't love you anymore. Find someone else. How do you respond? You don't respond defensively, not by trying to convince them, not by making them carry your convictions. Instead, you can say, I understand why you feel that way. Acknowledge their pain.
Yeah.
Similar to what you would with the prodigal, is acknowledging them. How do you respond? You don't ignore them. You acknowledge them.
Right.
You can say, you've seen a lot of pain, and I'm sorry, or I'm not asking you to carry my stand, or this is something between God and I have to trust that he's going to lead me through this. And so many times that will validate their emotions, and it lowers their defensiveness. So, and people calm down when they feel understood. That it kind of brings down again, it brings out that defensiveness, which is what
Mm-hmm.
you were doing with
Yeah.
me, and which is what we need to do. We need to start doing with our kids.
Yeah. Well, and like with yes, which is what the Lord has been showing me
Mm-hmm.
about our kids right now. But in the time when our daughter finally, when the Lord finally allowed me to share with her, and she was like, you know, she wasn't saying, "Mom, you need to leave," but she kind of, she was just like, "You shouldn't be putting up with this or whatever." And the only thing I would give her was, "Baby, you have to trust that I'm obeying the Lord. You have
Mm-hmm.
to trust that I'm hearing what the Lord is telling me." And so when I would give her that, and not just because she didn't want to hear that Dad needs me. She didn't want to hear, Dad's asking me to stay, or I'm staying so that I can keep our marriage together. She did not want to hear those things, which that's not why I was staying. It was because I was allowing, listening and obeying the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And so just sharing that with her, she couldn't really um, go against that. She wasn't really trying to go against that.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. And so this can be a moment that you can teach your children. And the book of Proverbs says that a gentle answer turns away wrath, and that's in Proverbs 15:1. You do not need your children to agree in order to remain obedient to God, but you do want to be a good, godly example to them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what you're doing. And I can't say it enough how proud I am of you and your stand and the role model that you were during that time to our kids in trusting God. And I know they're still broken by
Yeah.
what they experience, but I also know that they can't say or doubt God
Mm-hmm.
because they saw him work through your
Mm-hmm.
stand.
Yeah.
And it's so important for every stander to be that reflection of Christ so that your children have that hope that they can lean on.
Mm-hmm.
And that was through your stand, and that's how important it is.
Well, praise God, honey. Because the Lord even told me as you're talking, I'm thinking about our in law kids,
Mhm.
right? And just thinking about how our future son in law is reaching out to you for scripture. And
Mhm.
our daughter in laws, the Lord told me, I even have it in the journal in my journal where the Lord said, teach the girls how to love the boys unconditionally.
Mhm.
They're gonna learn from you. And just, they saw the stand where they hurt. Absolutely, the girls were hurt also,
Yeah.
but it's not just our kids, it's our what people say are in love kids, right? The in-law kids, they were a part of it
Yeah.
also.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a difficult thing. Of course, with me, I always go back to my embarrassing moments that
Hmm.
I lived in my life, but I also go back to my traumatic moments or those moments where I felt that I feel bad for what I did. And walking, I have images in my mind of course, my son standing right there crying. You all gathered here at the table when I was coming and going, and I
Hmm.
was trying so hard just to just walk right through and pretend like y'all weren't there, but y'all were there. But
Hmm.
yeah, just how dead inside I was. And as we've heard, you feel like I'm living my best life, but
Hmm.
inside I am so completely broken and dead. And I don't, I'm coping and trying to bury all that. And I don't, that's why I can't connect with anybody. I
Hmm.
refuse to connect with anybody because I'm so broken and dead inside. And I'm just burying all that hurt, and I'm trying to just get out of the reminder of what
Hmm.
I'm trying to bury. So,
Yeah, and I think it's really hard for standards because we're like, how can they do this to their kids? How can they keep doing this to their kids?
yeah.
And that's something that I remember thinking too, like, why have you always hurt our kids, right?
Hmm.
Because they've seen a lot of hurting, and it's what was going on within you, and it had
Yeah.
nothing to do with them. It had nothing to do with me. It was everything that was going on within you that you didn't realize. You didn't
Yeah.
realize, and I was not interceding for you the way that I was supposed to
Yeah.
because I didn't know.
Yeah, neither of us were
Hmm.
interceding. Yeah, and I'm supposed to be the spiritual leader and the cover of this home, and I wasn't, and so yeah, both of us were lacking
Yeah.
in
Well,
that.
and in the stand, the Lord, well, and He probably had been showing me. I just wasn't paying attention. He told me I was created for you, right? To intercede for you and to pray for you. But I was too busy saying, look at me and do what I'm telling you to do and how I want you to do it, and you do everything wrong.
Yeah, which I was, but yeah, I wasn't going to hear you. I was going to defend
Yeah,
myself and
right.
say, no, this is what you're doing wrong.
Yeah.
And so again, a gentle answer will turn away wrath. The great thing about all this is that there is hope
Hmm.
for healing after this, and your stand and how
Absolutely.
you stand is so vital to that. Fourth point is escaping the messenger trap. And some of you know exactly what this feels like. Your spouse asks your son or your daughter to pass along a message, or maybe the standard does, or your
Hmm.
daughter becomes the family investigator. Like, hey, check out what your dad or your mom is doing, right? Your children become the communication bridge. This creates enormous anxiety for the children, depending on how old they are. And adult children also. Research constantly shows that children caught in loyalty conflicts experience higher levels of stress, guilt, and emotional confusion. Instead, go ahead.
I'm sorry. What I wanted to say
Quack, quack.
real quick about the daughter and the investigating stuff. That's funny because our daughter
Mhm,
did. She reached out to me and she's like, "Mom, give me the number."
mhm,
And I said, "No, you don't need the phone number." And she says, "Well, I'm just gonna look it up." But what that's creating is an anxiety in her, because there's a reason the Lord didn't want me doing it, so
mhm.
that I wouldn't have that anxiety of trying to search and snoop and all that stuff. Why would I want that anxiety on my child?
Right.
So I said, no, baby, like you don't need it. It doesn't matter, right? So I'm having to share with them. That is the one thing that I did, is sharing with them what the Lord was telling me.
Yeah.
Um, Again, couldn't keep going to what you were doing, how you were hurting. It was what the Lord was saying. You have to speak this to them, because how are they going to go? They're not going to go against what the Lord is saying to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, just need to throw
No,
that in
that's
there.
fine. And instead of responding through your child, say, "I don't want you to carry messages between us. You deserve to be simply a child. You don't
Hmm.
need to get involved in this adult stuff, right?
Hmm.
The issue between your mother and I belong to us, not you.
Hmm.
And you're giving them permission to put down a burden that was never theirs to carry.
Yeah.
But the Lord can definitely use your child, as we said before, to speak to your spouse. But what we're saying is, don't be the reason why they do.
Hmm. Yeah.
Let the Lord use that.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah. Like if the child is with, let's just say prodigal's dad, and the child's like, "Dad, I love you," and I just, however the child feels led, but that it's not coming from mom's mouth,
Right.
and vice versa. If prodigal's mom, and it's not coming from dad's mouth, like trying to put things in. That's part of manipulating and suggesting that I could do to a friend, right? Where I'm trying to get something across like that. So that's where we don't want our kids to get caught up in that.
Yeah. Because that can snowball from there. It's
Hmm.
like, okay, we'll send this back to them. We'll
Hmm.
send this, but now
Yeah,
they're going back and forth.
right. And you absolutely cannot control how the prodigal is doing it.
Right.
You can't control them, but what you can do is control you. You can control how you're
That's
handling
a good
it
point.
and putting it before the Lord, because you're the one hearing the Lord.
That's
And
right.
so you allow the Lord to direct you in that, because like everything else that you've seen in your stand, you cannot control what your prodigal is doing. But maybe the Lord is going to give you a strategy for how to handle that and how to address it.
That's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up, because if the prodigal is doing it, you don't have to.
Right.
You put a
Hmm.
stop to that, or like you said, you can't stop them from doing it,
Right.
but you don't have to return the favor.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so good point. Again, point number 5 is healing your relationship with your children. For many of you all, restoration with children becomes its own journey,
Hmm.
like it has with us. Sometimes healing with your children starts long before healing with the spouse. Maybe it's healing. We've seen how you were trying, the Lord was leading you to heal with your mom.
Hmm.
So there's different people that need to be healed
Hmm.
in all of this. But here we're talking about the children. So
Yep.
children don't need perfect parents.
Right.
They need parents willing to acknowledge pain, apologize when necessary, and remain emotionally available.
Well, and that's what I had to do with our daughter for sure. A little bit before the stand and then during the stand, where because I would tell her, like, I always thought I was there for you, and she said, "Mom, you were, but you weren't emotionally. I didn't want to burden you with what was going on with me, because I could see what was going on with you. And I never thought about that. I always thought like I'm here. I'm here for you guys. I'm mom. Like come to me with anything. But she didn't want to. And our oldest probably the same way. He doesn't let too many things affect him, but now we're seeing it with the younger one. He told me the same thing. So I apologize to my kids that I wasn't the mom that they needed me to be when they needed me to be available for them. And and so yeah, everything that you're saying right there, honey, like I know this season hurt you, and um but it's telling them I'm sorry that I wasn't available for them.
Yeah. So sometimes, again, healing begins with simple statements like, I know this season hurt you. I know you saw things children
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't have to see. I'm sorry for my part in that pain.
Mm-hmm.
And humility opens doors that arguments can't. The apostle writes in the book of James, be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. In James chapter 1, verse 19, healing starts with listening more than explaining.
Mm-hmm.
And the last point is your children may understand later. Many children don't understand a parent while they're in the middle of the storm. They don't understand the stand. Understanding often comes later, sometimes years later, after their own marriage struggles, after their own disappointments, after their own relationship issues.
Mm-hmm.
But after they experience how difficult marriage or a relationship can be, sometimes that's when they'll understand. The seeds you're planting today may never bear fruit, may not bear fruit immediately, but faithfulness has a way of speaking across generations. And the Lord says in Exodus 20, verse 6, showing steadfast love to thousands of those who love me and keep my commandments, your obedience reaches further than you can see. It again, we will always repeat this. Your stand was bigger than just this right
Mm-hmm.
here.
Mm-hmm.
It was bigger than our kids. It was bigger than your mom, my mom, our siblings.
Mm-hmm.
It is huge. And God confirmed this with you when He said that. Do you remember?
What part?
That you have no idea.
Oh yeah, when he said you have no idea what I'm about to do through you and through him for my glory.
And this isn't just because someone's special, it's because
Yeah.
the stander answered the call,
Yeah.
took the assignment, and said, Lord, I give you my yes. From this day forward, you decided in your heart, Lord, no matter what it looks like,
Yeah.
I'm standing. I'm saying yes. Till the day I die, I'm giving you my yes.
Yep.
I mean, I can't imagine having to go through, and we've seen some of you standers, and we applaud you. We thank God for you that you've given God your yes for years,
Yeah.
some for close to a decade, and it's amazing to see that strength in you all. I look at you all kind of through the lens of my wife and what she did, and how difficult that was, but how strong you all are, even though you're hurting, even though it's a struggle. Like we said before, standing isn't going to be perfect, but you get up and you stand. So if your children don't understand your stand right now, don't lose heart. Just love on them, listen to them,
Yep.
protect them from the conflict whenever possible. Refuse to make them choose sides. And remember this, your stand is not only about recovering your marriage or a marriage, it's about showing the next generation what marriage, grace, forgiveness, faithfulness looks like when life becomes difficult. Because one healed family doesn't just change one story, it changes an entire family tree. And that is what standing is all about.
Mm-hmm.
When you make God the center and when you realize it is bigger than you, we are a testimony of how big it can be.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we're not special. We're no different from
Mm-hmm.
any other married couple who struggles. We've heard it quite often. My stand's a little different, possibly, but it's the same God in every stand.
Yeah.
And that's never changing.
Right.
So if this has resonated with you, many of you it has, um, we will pray for you. We continue to pray for every stander. We thank you all for just trusting us with your story and for supporting us just in watching these videos, just in commenting, just whatever. We really appreciate you all, and we will lift you and your children, your family, your stand all up to the Lord. And we thank you very much. We love you.